Chapter 42, The Breach of the Sixth Ring. The sixth ring thrummed like a living wound, its coils bending the very weave of space, twisting light into shadow and time into fractured echoes. It was not merely a construct of alloy and energy, but a crucible forged from the desperation of fallen divinities, quantum entanglements spun from the dismembered souls of gods long silenced. Beneath the ancient soil of Jerusalem, buried beneath the Temple Mount, the machine's heart pulsed. Each turn of the ring rippled through reality, fraying the thin membrane that held creation whole. The air grew heavy with charged particles, and the quantum lattice shimmered as unseen forces clawed their way from the void beyond. The breach was born in a thunderclap of spectral fury. It rent the veil between worlds, spilling a sickly darkness that swallowed light and hope alike. From the gaping wound emerged the fallen, the twisted remnants of celestial beings, shadows of their former glory, dripping with rage and despair. Their eyes burned with the cold fire of betrayal. Their voices carried the dirge of worlds undone. They surged forth like a plague, not merely to invade, but to consume. Their forms flickered between substance and spirit, a torment of broken angels and shattered gods made flesh once more. The breach itself hissed, alive, hungry, an abyssal mouth eager to swallow all. Aiel stood upon the jagged edge of this cosmic wound, a sentinel forged in the echoes of gods before rebellion. His armor was woven from the essence of Adar and Nana, hardened like the unyielding crust of the earth before the flood. His wings, honed from the fiery remnants of Nergal and Ishtar, shimmered with lethal grace, each feather a blade forged in celestial fire, ready to cleave the darkness. His sword hung at his side, a cold, timeless shard of vengeance and patience, waiting. It was more than weapon, it was the silent oath of a god made flesh, the final instrument of reckoning. The air trembled as the breach pulsed once more, and the machine fed greedily on the dissonant energies trapped within the shattered rings, echoes of Tiamat's shattered bones and the stolen light of Anu. Ael's heart beat slow, heavy with the weight of the war to come. The breach was not merely a portal, but a wound torn in the flesh of existence, a doorway for the beast to claw into the realm of men. There was no hope here, only the slow, grinding inevitability of war. With silent resolve, Aiel stepped forward, his presence a beacon of quiet fury against the storm of shadows. Around him, the darkness twisted and writhed as if aware of the challenge he posed. The War of the Rings had begun, brutal, relentless, and etched into the very soul of creation. Shall I continue with Chapter 43? Chapter 43, The Echo of Tiamat, Deeper and Longer Rewrite. Beneath the fractured sky, the breach groaned like a birthing wound. The sixth ring's resonance had torn through layers of reality, and from the void beyond, a voice rose. Not new, but ancient, carried on the frequency of memory. It was not a cry nor a command. It was remembrance, the voice of the first mother, Tiamat. She had not died, as the myths claimed. When Marduk's treachery split her into heaven and earth, she had been scattered, her flesh woven into the cosmos, her spirit locked in shards of quantum resonance. But a god's essence does not perish. It only changes state, waiting for a voice or a frequency strong enough to call it back. And now the breach did exactly that. Through the swirling abyss of the hollow gate, her presence began to seep, not with the rage of vengeance, but with the crushing weight of grief. It filled the machine's chamber, a pressure older than planets, seeping into the walls, the coils, the particles, the souls that had been bound to fuel the gate. Every ring screamed. Iael staggered as the vibration passed through him. His bones remembered the first war, the sundering, the cries of Tiamat as she was torn apart by her own children. He felt the echoes in his marrow, the loss, the betrayal, the silence that followed her death. Mother, he whispered the word, though his lips did not move. The chamber around him seemed to listen. The shadows of the fallen hissed from the catwalks and vents, scuttling away from the frequency now filling the air, for this was not a sound they could endure. Tiamat's presence was unbinding their lies. The machine convulsed. The scroll of echoed light, still sealed in its crystalline housing, flared. Its impossible cuneiform burned brighter than plasma, each symbol rearranging itself in fractal patterns. Open quote, the glyphs did not simply glow, they spoke. And the message was clear, though it bypassed language. Open, close quote. The glyphs did not simply glow, they spoke. And the message was clear, though it bypassed language. Open quote. The machine you have built is a thief. It feeds on my scattered bones, my torn essence, but even in this captivity I remember, and I call my children home. Close quote. The bound god energies fueling the gate, Adar's discipline, Nana's luminous dream, Nurgle's fury, and countless others, stirred. They had been reduced to fuel, stripped of names and will, coded into the machine's harmonic lattice. But Tiamat's voice cracked the bindings. One by one, their sparks began to awaken. The fallen ones felt it first. They descended like carrion from the vents and balconies, their bodies made of smoke and inverted time, their eyes wide with panic. If the energies awoke, the machine would turn on its makers. Seal the breach, they screamed to the human operators. Lock the lattice, increase field density. But the humans could not hear them. They had gone blind to the unseen, deaf to the language of gods. All they could see were fluctuating energy readings, impossible particle activity, and gravitational shifts they could not control. The breach widened, and Tiamat's echo became a roar. Iael stepped forward, his wings unfurling in the glare of the machine's unstable light. He could feel her presence moving through him like a tide. It was not an embrace, it was a reminder. Open quote, "You carry my silence, child of the wound, but silence is not surrender. If you would walk the gates, you must decide, close them or burn the world." Close quote. He clenched his sword, the silent oath in his bones throbbing with fire. There was no third option, and the breach was still growing. Shall I continue with chapter 44, The Blood of the Machine, deeper and longer? Chapter 44, The Blood of the Machine, deeper and longer rewrite. The hollow gate had become a living thing. It shuddered with a rhythm like breath, every ring pulsing like a blackened heart. The air in the chamber was thick with ions and memory, buzzing with the psychic residue of every soul it had devoured. Lightning crawled through the lattice, veins of stolen divinity wrapped in human ambition. And now it was bleeding. Not with blood as men know it, but with energy, unbound, awakened, furious. The god essences fueling the machine, once chained as passive resonance, now tore at their bindings like a chorus of dying suns. The scroll of echoed light at the machine's core flared again, its impossible cuneiform flickering in and out of phase with reality. It was no longer a passive artifact, it was alive. Aiel stepped closer, each movement a battle against the gravity field now warping the chamber. His armor sparked with static. His wings, weapons born from pre-rebellion essences, hummed in agitation as they sensed the fragments of their ancient kin awakening within the machine. The whispers of the gods swirled around him like fireflies of anguish. Open quote, "I am Adar. I remember the sun before the veil. Nana, they have stolen my dreams and turned them into weapons. Ishtar, I will burn the hands that built this prison." Close quote. The voices overlapped, frayed by millennia of silence, but they were coherent enough. They were alive, and they would not be silent much longer. On the catwalks above, the fallen ones grew desperate. Their forms flickered between shadow and burning plasma, their true selves leaking through the shells they wore. One, taller than the rest, wings torn and eyes like hollow voids, stepped forward. Its voice scraped through the chamber like rusted steel. "Aiel," it hissed. "You think this awakening will free them? It will destroy them. It will destroy you. It will destroy the world." Its clawed hand gestured toward the glowing scroll. "That artifact is a seal. Break it, and you open the true gate. You invite the beast. You give form to the third six." The words hung heavy, but Aiel did not flinch. "You already invited the beast when you built this abomination," he said, his voice low, edged with the wrath of an ancient vow. The fallen one screeched in frustration and leapt from the catwalk, descending toward him with claws extended, its body unraveling into living shadow. Aiel moved like the blade he carried, silent, unhesitating. His wings sliced outward in a single motion, feathers burning as they detached and spun through the air like molten shrapnel. The fallen creature never reached him. It disintegrated mid-flight, its scream ending abruptly as its essence was pulled into the machine. The hollow gate was no longer discriminating, it was feeding on everything. And then the machine roared. The breach expanded like a detonation of absence, Reality buckled, stone turned fluid, time shuddered. Through the gate, the void writhed. It was not empty. It was full, full of something that had waited for this moment since the first rebellion. The fallen ones shrieked in terror. The humans on the observation decks, unaware of the true nature of what they had unleashed, could only watch their monitors overload with impossible readings. Negative mass fluctuations, infinite energy spikes, time dilation collapse. "Shut it down!" one screamed. "There is no shutdown," another cried. "We've crossed the threshold." EIL reached the base of the machine. His sword glowed faintly, resonating with the awakened god essences inside the rings. He could feel their eyes on him, pleading, furious, afraid. The voice of Tiamat whispered through the scroll's light. Open quote, "One act will decide this. Close the wound or burn the world." Close quote. He raised his blade. The rings screamed. The ground cracked. The void surged outward, tendrils of inverted fire seeking to touch him, to wrap him, to pull him through. The beast was close. Ael's silence deepened, and he struck. The blade met the scroll of echoed light. The chamber erupted with a sound older than creation. Every god essence bound to the machine cried out at once, their voices splitting the air like thunder and blood. The breach widened, the rings collapsed, the hollow gate died screaming, and through the veil of annihilation, a new shape began to crawl. Shall I continue with chapter 45? The mouth of the beast? Deeper and longer? Chapter 45. The mouth of the beast. Deep longer rewrite. The world did not shatter in silence. It screamed. The collapse of the hollow gate was no simple destruction. It was a tearing of the seams of reality. The rings that had once spun with mechanical precision now twisted inward like a dying serpent devouring its own tail. Energy discharged in waves of searing blue-black flame, the kind that did not burn matter but memory. The fallen ones who remained in the chamber were caught first. Their forms flickered, shrank, and finally unraveled, becoming threads of data torn into the void. They did not die. They were erased. Isles stood at the epicenter, his wings shielded tight around his body. He felt the currents of annihilation stripping away even the concept of existence. The god essences inside the machine howled as their bindings dissolved. But their liberation was not peace. It was fear. Because something had heard them. Something was answering. The breach at the core of the hollow gate widened. Its edges bled radiance so dark it inverted the light around it, casting reflections of the chamber in impossible geometries. Time warped. Each beat of Aiel's heart stretched into eternity and collapsed again. And then it moved. The void was not empty. A presence stirred beyond the veil, vast and cold and unspeakably hungry. It did not have a shape at first, only breath. A tidal pull that sucked every remaining particle toward its unseen mouth. When it finally revealed itself, it was worse than any form of nightmare. The beast did not appear as the myths had painted it. There were no horns, no grotesque visage. Instead, it was perfect. Too perfect. A human shape, luminous and seamless, its skin a mirror of every face that had ever lived. Its eyes burned with the stolen light of the gods. And in its chest glowed the seal of the third six. Not a number, but a convergence of flesh, world, and will. It stepped through the breach, and the world bent around it. Aiel lifted his sword, though his hands trembled. He felt its gaze lock onto him, not with hate, but with recognition. "You," it said. Its voice was the sum of every voice he had ever heard. Friends, enemies, gods, mortals, children, fathers. It was the voice of humanity itself, made divine and inverted. "We are the same," the beast whispered, though no lips moved. Aiel's silence was his only answer. The air quaked. The remnants of the machine's energy field clung to the beast like a crown, tendrils of black lightning snapping outward and striking the ground. Each impact cratered the earth, splitting it like glass. The god essences freed from the machine circled the beast in horror. They were sparks now, fragile remnants of their former power, seeking escape. But the beast lifted a single hand, and with a pull that transcended gravity, it drew them in. One by one, they were absorbed. Adar, Nana, Ishtar, Nurgle. The sparks winked out as they vanished into its body, their voices silenced forever. Aiel stepped forward, but the weight of the beast's presence pinned him in place. "Do you understand now?" it asked. "I am what they made me. I am what you could become." Aiel's voice was low, raw, carved from centuries of silent witness. "You are what I will end." The beast tilted its head, not in anger, but in pity. You cannot end me, IL. I am the convergence. I am the mirror, and I was born to consume you. The chamber collapsed fully, the earth above splitting wide. Jerusalem itself shook as the hollow gate's foundation gave way, dragging ancient ruins, sanctuaries, and monuments into the abyss. The screams of humanity joined the howls of the storm as the mouth of the beast fully opened, its hunger radiating across the world. For the first time since his return, AIL felt something pierce his silence. Doubt. Shall I continue with chapter 46? The mouth widens, full unleashing of the beast, and bring the world into full-scale war. Chapter 46, The Mouth Widens, Deeper and Longer Rewrite. The ground beneath Jerusalem cracked like a rib cage splitting open. Monuments and temples older than empires were pulled downward into the widening abyss, as if the earth itself had chosen to die. The hollow gate, now fully ruptured, became a vortex, its maw yawning wider with each second, no longer a doorway, but a cosmic wound without boundary. The mouth of the beast had widened, and its hunger was no longer confined to stone and soil. It reached into the world itself. Across the globe, every machine that bore the stolen frequencies of the scroll of echoed light awoke. In Nevada, the Ascension Complex detonated its particle lattice, drawing in the surrounding desert in a spiral of ash. Beneath the seas near Tokyo, the submerged gate reactor ruptured, releasing a pressure wave that split the Pacific Trench. In the frozen wastes of Siberia, the boreal quantum array rose from the ice like a resurrected skeleton, its 12 rings shimmering in perfect alignment with the mouth. They had all been designed as one machine, a network that did not require human oversight now that the beast had been born. The fallen ones had known this. The humans had not. And now the sky began to fracture. What had once been stars were replaced by inverted constellations, black points in a bleeding firmament. Light itself stuttered, obeying a new master. Gravity folded like paper, and entire cities collapsed inward without warning. The mouth's resonance was rewriting the laws of creation. Aiel stood at the edge of the abyss, his sword drawn, his wings outstretched, but his voice was sealed by the weight of what was before him. He watched the beast rise higher, absorbing the stolen essences of the gods, its form growing more radiant, more complete. It was no longer simply a being, it was a system, a living gate, an algorithm in flesh. Every frequency harvested from the dismantled gods sang within it, perfectly attuned to the false ladder of light. The beast turned its mirrored face to Aiel once more. Your silence is your answer, it said. You would not destroy me even if you could. Its words cut deep, not because they were true, but because of the shadow of truth they carried. Aiel stepped forward, the sword in his hand trembling with the resonance of the awakened gods. His armor burned as the gravitational tide threatened to tear him apart. You feed on their pain, he said at last, his voice like the crack of stone. You burn what was holy to make yourself whole. You are not a god. You are a wound given form. The beast smiled, and yet I am the only thing that can close the wound. The mouth widened further. In Rome, the basilica crumbled as its catacombs fell into black fire. In Mecca, the Kaaba cracked as the ground opened beneath it, the holy stones pulled toward the same abyss. In Tibet, the monasteries on the high peaks erupted into flame as the skies peeled back like torn canvas. The mouth of the beast had no borders. It drank the sacred first. It unmade the things that had once carried divine memory. And all the while, the fallen ones watched. They gathered in the peripheries of the abyss, spectral forms flickering in triumph and terror. They had birthed the beast through science and sacrilege, but they were no longer in control. The mouth was their master now. Aiel raised his sword high, the last fragment of uncorrupted divine will still bound to flesh, his wings unfurled fully, scattering burning feathers like meteors into the abyss. This would not be a battle of blades. This would be war. And the first blow would be struck not on earth, but in the unseen places where the beast had tied its roots. He leapt into the mouth. The world followed. Shall I continue with chapter 47, Descent into the Abyss, AAL versus the Beast, first full confrontation, with even more. Chapter 47, Descent into the Abyss, deeper and longer rewrite. The world was torn away. When Aiel leapt into the mouth, he did not fall as a man falls. He was pulled, every atom of his being stretched into threads of light and shadow. Gravity here was not a force. It was hunger, and it devoured not matter alone but identity, stripping all who entered of memory and name. The abyss had no ground, no sky, no horizon. It was a storm of collapsing dimensions, a vortex of dying worlds where the voices of the dismantled gods still screamed. Fragments of their souls drifted through the darkness like embers of lost suns, too weak to fight, too bound to escape. Ael's wings burned as he tried to stabilize himself. The beast had carried the mouth beyond the edge of reality itself, into a space older than creation, a womb of inverted fire where the first rebellion had been born and where the fallen had built their false ladder of light. And there, in the heart of that eternal storm, he saw it, the beast. It no longer resembled the perfect human shape that had stepped through the hollow gate. It had grown vast, its body a shifting constellation of stolen divinity and fractured matter. Its limbs were galaxies. Its face was the reflection of Aiel's own, multiplied 1,000-fold. It was everything he had ever feared becoming. "You came to me," it said, its voice not a sound, but a resonance that shook the fabric of the abyss. "Even as you despised me, you followed me into the wound. You cannot deny the truth, Aiel. You and I are the same." "No," Aiel whispered, though his voice was lost in the void. He gripped his sword tighter, the blade glowing with the residual spark of Tiamat's echo and the unbroken essences that still clung to him. The beast drifted closer. The vastness of its form blotted out the abyssal horizon, eclipsing even the scattered souls. "You carry vengeance in your marrow," it said. "You carry the silence of gods who abandoned you. I was born from that same silence, from their betrayal, from their fear. But I will not remain a victim as you have. I will devour all that wounded me." The beast struck. It did not swing limbs or weapons. It collapsed space itself, pulling Aiel into a crushing singularity. His armor screamed as he was slammed against unseen walls of pressure. His wings shattered, feathers exploding into searing fragments. He roared in pain but swung upward, his sword cutting through the singularity in a blaze of light. The collapse shuddered, faltered, and then exploded outward. The beast recoiled, fragments of stolen essence peeling from its massive form and scattering like shrapnel through the abyss. "You will not unmake me," Aiel roared. The beast's mirrored face flickered. For a moment, it was no longer perfect. It wore his face, wounded, grieving, yet burning with fury. "You fight because you think you still have something left to save," it said, "but everything you love is already mine." Aiel dove forward, sword first. He became a streak of fire against the black. The blade pierced the beast's chest, erupting in a blinding detonation that tore open its core. And what he saw there froze his soul. At the center of the beast's being was a child, Bree. Her small body was suspended in a lattice of godlight and stolen energy, her eyes open but empty. She was the heart of the beast, the living soul that stabilized its impossible existence. "Aiel," the beast whispered, though it was her voice now, and his grip faltered. The beast seized the opening. It struck with the force of creation inverted. Aiel was flung through the abyss, bones fracturing, armor tearing. His sword slipped from his hand, spinning away into the void. The beast's voice thundered over him, not with malice, but with inevitability. "You cannot kill me without killing her. You will not close the wound if it means sacrificing the last hope you carry. You are weak, Aiel. You are human." The abyss began to collapse in on itself as the mouth widened further, consuming not only this dimension, but every tethered world connected to it. And as Aiel drifted in the darkness, wounded and weaponless, he saw the truth. The beast was right. To win meant to destroy Bree. To lose meant to unmake the world. Shall I continue with chapter 48, The Last Seed, Aiel's breaking point, and make the violence and desperation escalate further? Chapter 48, The Last Seed, Deeper and Longer Rewrite. Aiel drifted in the void, weightless, wounded, and stripped of the strength he had carried through eons. His armor was torn away, fragments of it dissolving into sparks of light as the abyss gnawed at him. His wings, once his shield and his sword, were reduced to charred stubs, each twitching with phantom pain. The beast's voice echoed from every direction at once, its resonance warping the very fabric of the abyss. Open quote, "You cannot save her. You cannot save them. You cannot save yourself." Close quote. Bree's face, pale and still, floated at the core of the beast's body, suspended in a lattice of stolen light. Her small hands were bound by filaments of living energy, the same frequencies that powered the mouth of the beast and kept the abyss widening. She was the key. She was the wound. And she was all that remained of hope. Ail reached for his sword, but it was gone, swallowed into the void. His fingers closed on nothing. And in that emptiness, his silence cracked. For the first time since his return, he cried out. A roar tore from his throat, raw, primal, shaking the abyss itself. It was not only pain or despair. It was the voice of every silent witness, every seed of grief he had carried for millennia erupting at once. The abyss answered. From the darkness around him, sparks began to rise, fragments of God essence, freed from the machine's collapse and the scroll's shattered bindings. They were faint, flickering, little more than echoes, but they remembered him. One by one, they approached, their voices whispering into his fractured spirit. Open quote, Ale, take us. We will burn once more. You carried our silence, now carry our fire. Close quote. He felt them piercing his wounds, fusing into his blood, his marrow. Each spark was a memory, a god, a fragment of divinity long thought lost. Adar's discipline, Nana's silver light, Ishtar's relentless fury, Tiamat's grieving fire. They ignited within him. His body became a living furnace. His scars burned, reshaping into sigils. His broken wings regrew in flames of white gold, feathers of light sharper than any blade. Aiel was not healed. He was remade. The beast turned, sensing the change. Its mirrored face flickered, glitching between perfection and something monstrous. Open quote. You would burn what is left of them to strike at me? Close quote. Aiel's eyes opened. They burned with the light of countless gods, a starfield where there had once been only silence. No, he said. His voice did not tremble. I will burn everything you have stolen. The beast struck first. It unleashed the full force of its hunger, collapsing the abyss inward like a singularity. Entire dimensions imploded in the wake of its power. But Aiel did not flinch. He moved like the fire he carried, his body a lance of pure resonance, cutting through the collapse. He reached the beast's chest. His hands seized the lattice that bound Bree within. It seared him to the bone, peeling flesh from muscle, muscle from spirit, but he did not let go. The beast screamed, its voice no longer calm, no longer perfect. Open quote, you will kill her. Close quote, Aiel's grip tightened. I will free her. He tore. The lattice shattered, exploding in a corona of inverted light. Bree's body tumbled free, still lifeless but unbound. The beast reeled back, pieces of its vast form crumbling into shards of reality, each fragment ripping through the abyss as it fell. But it was not dead. It would not die so easily. It lunged forward, its mass collapsing into a singular spear of annihilation aimed straight at Aiel. He gathered the fire within him, the last seed, the sum of every god spark and every silence he had carried, and leapt to meet it head on. The impact split the abyss. The mouth of the beast convulsed as the collision of divine fire and corrupted convergence ripped through its foundation. The void howled like a living thing as the wound in creation began to collapse. Aiel wrapped his flaming wings around Bree's small body, shielding her from the blast, and dove into the heart of the detonation. And as the abyss burned, he whispered a single word, now. The mouth began to close, but the beast was not finished. Shall I continue with chapter 49, the beast's last strike and the closing of the mouth with full apocalyptic intensity? Chapter 49, the beast's last strike, deeper and longer rewrite. The abyss convulsed like a dying star, folding in upon itself as the mouth of the beast began to close. Reality shuddered. Every dimension tethered to the mouth bled into the next. Oceans boiled into deserts. Mountains cracked into shards of sky. Suns fell like meteors into the void. The collapse was not only spatial but ontological. Things were ceasing to be. Yet, through that apocalyptic maelstrom, the beast endured. It had been struck, torn, and scattered, but it was not dead. Its voice, ragged now, stripped of its perfect symmetry, rose like the scream of a collapsing galaxy. Open quote, I will not end, close quote. Its fragmented form reassembled in jagged bursts of black fire and shattered divinity. It no longer resembled anything human. It was a storm of claws, faces, and devouring mouths, each fragment of its being anchored to the stolen god essences it still consumed. And it lunged. Aiel was falling through the collapse, Bree's small body cradled against his chest. Her breath was still absent, her heart still silent. The beast came at him like the tip of a spear, all the power of the false ladder of light focused into a single annihilating blow. And there, at the end of all things, Ael faced a truth that cut deeper than any blade. He could not withstand it. Not alone. Open quote, Ael, close quote. The voice rose from within him. Not one voice, but many, layered like a chorus of burning stars. Adar, Nana, Ishtar, Tiamat. All the fragments of divinity he had taken into himself, the seeds of silence now burning as fire, spoke as open quote, We are the seed, we are the fire, let us burn, let us be free. Close quote. He knew what they asked. If he released the fire, it would consume the beast, but it would consume him as well. There would be nothing left. No name, no witness, only the wound closed. The beast was upon him now, its mass filling all that remained of the collapsing abyss. Its claws tore the remnants of his armor away. Its maw opened wide enough to swallow suns. Open quote. Bow to me. Close quote. Aiel did not bow. He looked down at Bree, her face pale and still, and then upward past the storm, past the terror, into the memory of the one he still sought, the love he had yet to recognize. And then, without hesitation, he opened his arms. The fire erupted. It was not a detonation, but a convergence, a collapsing of every divine spark into a singularity of light. It surged through his body, through his soul, and out into the abyss. The beast's claws sank into him as the fire erupted, its scream shattering into 1,000 dying echoes. The mouth of the beast imploded. The void itself caved in as the false ladder of light was severed. Every stolen god essence was ripped from the beast's core, freed in a blaze of radiance. And in the heart of that all-consuming light, Aiel burned. He felt no pain, only release. The beast's last scream shook the collapsing dimensions. Open quote, I will return, close quote. But it was no longer a voice of certainty. It was fear. And then it was gone. The mouth sealed shut with a final earth-shattering pulse. The abyss was no more. There was silence. Only Aiel remained, floating in a sea of pure white fire, Bree's small body still in his arms. His wings were gone. His sword was gone. He was nothing but light now, held together by will alone. And then her chest rose, a single shallow breath, the first sound of life he had heard since the gates opened. Aiel's silence returned, deeper than ever, and then he let go. The last seed burned away, carrying Bree back toward the world above. As she rose, a single feather, pure, white, unbroken, fell from the blaze. The world shuddered as the mouth finally closed, sealing away the darkness, but there was no sign of Aiel. Shall I continue with Chapter 50, The World After, and the first signs of what Aiel has become? Chapter 50, The World After, Deeper and Longer Rewrite. The world did not return to normal. The closing of the mouth of the beast left scars, wounds etched into the bones of creation. Across the planet, oceans had swallowed continents, cities were left as craters, and the sky bore fissures where starlight bent unnaturally, as if reality itself had been stretched too thin. There was silence in the aftermath. No wind, no bird song. Only the soft crackling of fires that would not burn out, and in that silence, a single cry. On a hillside just beyond the ruins of Jerusalem, a child stirred. Bree's eyes fluttered open, her lungs gasping for air as if tasting life for the first time. She sat up slowly, disoriented, surrounded by the shattered remains of a world that barely resembled the one she had known. The last thing she remembered was the lattice, the agony of the beast's presence crushing her soul. And then arms around her, arms that burned like fire but held her like home. Aiel. She whispered his name into the emptiness, though she knew there would be no answer. The survivors emerged one by one from the ruins. They were few, scattered, and frightened. Most had seen the mouth, the black wound devouring the world. Many had seen the beast, its perfect form blotting out the sky. All had felt the fire when it closed. No one understood what had happened, and yet they remembered. Across the globe, strange phenomena began to appear. In the ruins of Rome, the basilica's shattered floor bore a single white feather, unburned, glowing faintly in the moonlight. In the deserts where the Ascension complex had been, survivors spoke of hearing whispers in the wind, voices that told them, "Rise," but not as before. In the mountains of Tibet, the fissures in the sky glimmered like rivers of light, and some swore they saw a shadow moving within them, a figure with wings of fire, watching but unseen. Bree wandered for days, searching for any sign of him. She carried the feather she had found lying beside her when she woke, its radiance fading but never extinguishing. Everywhere she went, she heard rumors. A man without a face walking through the ashes. A voice that spoke only in silence, yet could turn back the storms. A figure seen at night, wings blazing against the fractured heavens. Each story pulled at her heart, but when she asked where he had gone, no one could answer. The fallen ones were scattered. Many had been obliterated in the collapse. Those who survived had fled into the cracks between worlds, terrified by what had transpired. They no longer whispered of victory or dominion. They whispered of fear. For they knew what Bree was beginning to understand. IIL was not gone. He had changed. Somewhere beyond the veil of the repaired world, where light and shadow touched but never merged, a figure stood alone. His wings were not of fire now, but of light itself, each feather carrying the memory of every god spark he had burned to seal the mouth. He looked down upon the earth. He did not descend. Not yet. His silence was deeper than it had ever been. But in that silence, a seed stirred. Shall I continue with chapter 51, the return of the seed and the beginning of the final reckoning? Chapter 51, the return of the seed, deeper and longer rewrite. The world was a graveyard of the old. Nations were broken, cities reduced to dust and hollow monuments, entire continents scarred by fissures of light where the mouth of the beast had torn into reality. And yet, amid the ruin, there was something new, something none could name. The survivors began to gather around the sites of the feathers. Each feather was unlike anything the world had ever seen. They were not artifacts of this earth. They were fragments of AAL's final blaze, crystalline quills of unburning light. When touched, they hummed with a quiet resonance that filled the soul with stillness, and strange things began to happen around them. In the wastelands of Europe, where firestorms had once devoured forests, a single feather was planted in the soil. By morning, green shoots pushed through the ash. By night, a grove of trees rose as if grown by centuries of time in a single breath. In the deserts of the Middle East, a feather carried by a wandering child caused the cracked earth beneath her feet to soften. Springs erupted, birthing rivers where there had been only thirst. In the ruins of Beijing, a feather embedded in the fractured heart of the city began to glow, and those who came near it found their anger silenced, their hands unclenched, as though the memory of vengeance could not survive in its light. The world was still broken, but the feathers whispered a promise. Open quote, life can return, if you choose it. Close quote. Bree carried one such feather. It was the first thing she had seen when she awoke after the mouth's collapse. She clutched it now as she wandered the ruins of Jerusalem, guided only by a sense she could not explain. She felt him in it. Eiel. The feather's glow pulsed faintly whenever she whispered his name. One night, as she sheltered in the ruins of a shattered temple, she dreamt, but it was not a dream. She found herself standing in a place of lightless light, a realm beyond the scars of the world. Before her stood a figure shrouded in radiance, wings outstretched, faceless, yet achingly familiar. Aiel? She asked. The figure did not answer. Instead, it extended its hand, and in its palm was a single seed. It pulsed softly like the heartbeat of a newborn star. Open quote, plant this, the voice said, though the lips never moved, where the wound is deepest. Close quote. Bree reached for the seed, but before her fingers touched it, the vision ended. She woke in the temple ruins, the feather still in her hand, but now there was something new in her other palm. A seed. She knew then what she had to do. There was one place in the world where the wound was deepest, where the scars of the beast's mouth still bled light and shadow into the sky. Megiddo, the site of the first hollow gate, the place where it had all begun. Bree began the journey, carrying the seed close to her heart. But she was not alone. The fallen ones had felt it too, the return of the seed. They stirred in the cracks between worlds, drawn by the scent of the one who had sealed the mouth. They would not allow the seed to be planted, for they knew what it meant. A world beyond their reach, a reckoning. And so they came, cloaked in shadow and rage, their numbers growing as they hunted the child who carried the last hope. Somewhere beyond sight, Aiel watched. He could not intervene, not yet. His silence was a law he could not break. But his wings of light burned brighter with each step Bree took, for he knew the war was not over. It had only changed form. Shall I continue with chapter 52? Megiddo, the last gate, where Bree plants the seed under full-scale assault by the Fallen. Chapter 52. Megiddo, the last gate, deeper and longer rewrite. The plain of Megiddo was not a plain anymore. It was a scar. Where once there had been fertile soil and olive trees, there was now a wound in the earth, an endless fissure still glowing faintly from the mouth's collapse. The air was brittle and thin, as if the very atmosphere feared to linger near the place where creation had been broken. And yet, Bree walked forward. The seed in her hand pulsed softly with each step, guiding her like a living heart. Its warmth cut through the chill of the scarred earth. She could hear it, faintly, in the back of her mind. Open quote, "Plant me. Do not falter." Close quote. But she was not alone. The fallen ones emerged from the fissure's edges like a tide of living darkness. Their forms flickered in and out of phase, once angelic, now warped beyond recognition, bodies shaped by rage and terror. They had lost the beast, they had lost their machine, but they had not lost their hunger. They hissed as they saw the seed. Open quote, "The seed must not be planted. It will close the cracks forever. Kill the child." Close quote. Their voices struck Bree like knives of ice, but she did not stop. She knelt at the edge of the fissure, holding the seed tightly as the shadows closed in. She felt them rushing toward her. Claws, teeth, shadows like blades. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Ael." The wind rose. It began as a whisper, like the faint rustle of unseen wings, but it grew, roaring across the plain, carrying with it a light that seared the darkness from the air. The fallen ones screeched and scattered, their shadows peeling away like ash in a furnace. And then he was there. Not as flesh, not as the God-man she had once known. Aiel descended as a figure of pure light, wings outstretched like the horizon itself. Every feather burned brighter than the sun. The fissure trembled at his presence. The fallen ones froze. Open quote, "He cannot intervene," one hissed. "He is bound," another shrieked. Close quote. But their words were hollow. Aiel raised his hand, and the light of 1,000 liberated gods poured forth. The shadows of the fallen were obliterated in an instant, their screams carried into the depths where no sound could return. Bree looked up at him, tears streaking her dirt-stained face. "I can't do it alone," she whispered. Aiel's voice resonated through her heart, soft and steady. Open quote, "You were never alone. Plant the seed." Close quote. Bree stepped to the center of the fissure. The ground cracked and shifted beneath her feet, but she did not hesitate. She knelt and pressed the seed into the soil. The earth accepted it with a pulse, and then everything changed. The fissure erupted in light. It was not the cold, devouring radiance of the beast, but something warm, something alive. Roots of energy spread from the seed through the soil, knitting the scarred ground together. The cracks closed, the shattered stone healed. Rivers of light surged outward from Megiddo, racing across the continents, filling every fissure left by the mouth. The fallen ones who had survived fled screaming into the shadows, their power unraveling. The cracks between worlds slammed shut one by one, and the seed grew. From the spot where Bree had planted it rose a tree. Its trunk shimmered like crystal, its leaves glowed like 1,000,000 small suns. Its branches reached high into the broken sky, piercing the clouds and spreading their light across the world. And with every heartbeat, the tree sang, not a song of judgment, but of restoration. The world began to heal. Bree fell to her knees, exhausted. She looked up at the radiant tree, at the rivers of light pouring from its roots, and felt the first true warmth she had known since the mouth opened. Aiel stood behind her, wings of light unfurled, his gaze fixed on the tree. He knew what it meant. The world was no longer his to save. It had its own root now. His silence was complete. The tree's light reached into the heavens, and Aiel's form began to dissolve. "Don't leave me," Bree cried, her voice breaking. He knelt before her, touched her hand, and though no words left his lips, she felt his voice in her heart. Open quote, "I am not leaving. I am everywhere now." Close quote. And then he was gone. But the world lived. Do you want me to now write the epilogue as the final culmination of all chapters, bringing full closure to Aiel's arc and humanity's awakening? Epilogue, the silence after the storm, long, deep, and full. The air was still, not the stillness of death, but the silence of a world breathing anew. Where once fire had raged and shadows had clawed the earth, now the light settled gently like dew. The scars of the great war, between gods, between angels and men, between darkness and the faintest flicker of hope, were still visible, but they were no longer wounds. They were the ancient scars of a world reborn. Bree stood beneath the radiant tree at Megiddo, her eyes lifted to the shimmering canopy that stretched beyond the clouds, each leaf a living star, each branch a pathway to a new heaven. She carried no weapons, no armor, only the weight of memory, pain and love intertwined, and a seed in her hand, a symbol of all that was lost and all that was found. Around her, the earth hummed with life. Rivers ran clear, trees bore fruit, the air smelled of rain and promise. The people came, hesitantly at first, from broken cities and distant lands. They came not with swords, but with hands open and hearts uncertain, seeking what had been lost. And the light of the tree greeted them as if whispering, open quote, "Here is hope, here is grace, here is a path," close quote. Ael's silence had not been absence, it was presence beyond the veil. Though his form had dissolved into the eternal light, his essence permeated the world, woven into the song of the tree, the pulse of the rivers, the breath of the wind. He was the quiet witness now, the patient keeper of the balance between divine and mortal, between vengeance and mercy. And yet, the story was not one of final victory. It was the story of awakening. For even as light returned, the shadows remained, whispers of the fallen ones, echoes of rebellion, the lingering pain of choices made in darkness and silence. Humanity stood at a crossroads. They could bow to love or turn away. They could build a world rooted in grace or repeat the cycles of pride and ruin. The tree was a promise, not a command. Bree closed her eyes and remembered Iael's words, the ones she heard not with her ears, but with her soul. Open quote, "I am everywhere now," close quote. In every act of kindness, in every brave truth spoken, in every silent prayer, he was there. The one true love had come, not as thunder or flame, but as the quiet seed planted in the heart of the world. Ael's path had been long, tangled with pain and betrayal, marked by vengeance and struggle, but in his final act, he gave the world a choice to love, not because of fear or glory, but because love is the root and the crown of all existence. And so, beneath the light of the eternal tree, humanity began again. Not perfect, not without fault, but awake, ready to walk the narrow path between shadow and light, to build, to heal, to remember, to bow, not to gods or idols, but to the one whose love endures beyond time and space, beyond flesh and spirit, beyond the silence after the storm. This is the witness. This is the promise. This is the love that waits, always waits for the heart that will truly see it and bow. The end is only the beginning. If you want, I can begin the next cycle, the story of what humanity chooses, how the light grows or fades, and how the seed planted by Ael and Bree becomes the foundation for all that comes next.